hosted by the Pan-African Information Communication Technology Association, which is PAICTA. And our theme for today is Women in Digital. Thank you to the panelists and the speakers for participating in today's session. And with it being an historical Women's Month of March, we honor the legacies of women who have come before us, who led the charge for change, each in their own way. Today, Today there are so many inspiring women picking up where these fierce females left off, working tirelessly for the greater good and creating history in their own right. We are amongst some really powerful and prestigious women in our panel and our speakers today. Without any further ado, I would like to kick the event off with an opening remark by Dr. Ntombo Vuyo, who is the Dean of the Management and Commerce Faculty of the University of Fort Hare in East London. This is a typical example of a woman empowered in technology. So Ntombo Vuyo, I now hand it over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I see that there are some good gentlemen here who are supporting this cause and becoming part of our discussion. I would like to welcome you to the first session organized by the Women in Digital Era, a chapter of PAICTA. The purpose is to start a series of discussions, and this year's theme, as indicated, is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. We all know where we come from as women, and we know that the more things change, the more things start moving away from where we want them to be. So we cannot say that because it's 2021, we are moving away from focusing on women. There's always something that we need to focus on. It's going to take us years and years of getting everyone. We should get to a point where these discussions are not by women, but they are advanced by everyone in the society, to say that we recognize that women are equal to men. Women are equal participants in leadership. One of the research that was done some few years back was on how women were not able to create visions and formulate strategies that can take and form a future in organization. These series of webinars that we're starting today, we're hoping that they will start opening and also informing more and more people on how to change that perceptions and many other perceptions about the abilities of women and what women are capable of doing. And that women, because our children need to grow differently, they need to learn differently, and they need to stop thinking that because I'm a woman, this I cannot do. If I get into a science field, there are limitations on what I can do. I don't want to start putting words in our panelists. Our panelists for today are Miss Elizabeth Kamutuezu from the Ministry of ICT in Namibia, Ms. Nosipo Simelani, Oracle University, Director for the Africa region, Prof. Mikey Genchis, the University of Western Cape, Associate Professor in the Information Systems, and Dr. Stella Moloto-Vuma, University of Johannesburg. I would like to send out a special welcome to these panelists, and also I would like to welcome the ladies and gentlemen who have came up with this idea and have worked hard to ensure that we're here at this point. And also welcome all our participants. The time is 4 o'clock. And there are many such events that are happening today, but you chose to become part of our event. Without wasting any further time, I would like to hand over to Shrin Pillay, who's going to elaborate further how the round tables will take place. Thank you. You are all welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Ntombo-Vuyo. Listening to you, it's really inspiring. If you look at the digital era, this is what COVID, you mentioned COVID. COVID is a typical example of how the digital world has changed. Look at us today. And I mentioned this earlier. We are now all sitting and doing a webinar virtually. Did we ever think this will happen? Never, right? So this is what the world has now evolved to. And here's opportunities for us ladies to go out there and make the breakthrough during this COVID era to try and really uplift the digital era. We will now proceed to the roundtable discussion. I'm honored again to be amongst such powerful and prestigious women. What I'm going to do is ask each one of you to briefly introduce yourself for 2 minutes. And basically in your introduction, you could tell us what inspires you. What is your personal philosophy to give the ladies and gentlemen on the call some inspiration? I'll start off with the first speaker, Stella. Stella, if you could maybe share with us briefly introduction about yourself, what inspires you, and what is your personal philosophy? Stella, are you there?
She's on mute.
There we go. The technology slogan, forgot to unmute. Greetings, everyone. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm Stella, simply known as Ma Stella in the university. I grew up in Limpopo. I'm a village girl. In the department where I'm head of department, that's the department where I started as a tutor. So literally volunteered my service from the early stages as I was doing my 3rd year. And today my lecturers that were my lecturers, I'm actually leading them in that space. But just to say in that space, that shows that it's not only servant leadership, but for me, it tells a lot about the university trusting their own product. Whatever that they're cooking in the kitchen, they were able to trust it to say, come and sit and lead in the same unit. But yeah, that's in summary who I am. Thank you.
And Stella, before I leave you, what inspires you? Being a doctor, one, and also being the HOD of Applied Information Systems. What is your inspiration?
Okay, I think mine is not really a complicated inspiration. For me, is I wake up every morning and make a conscious effort each and every day and make sure that I interact with everyone from every level, be it from the clients who are my students or be it from the village where I grew up, just to approach people and understand from where they are coming from, share from their different topics. And then in that situation, I'm able to just take it with altruism in my heart and understand that we both from our own different world, but we are here to also build a strong community going forward. So that's just as simple as that, not complicated one. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you. That was inspirational. I will now move to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you could probably share with us what inspires you, what is your personal philosophy, and also looking at your career and looking at your journey, it's also very, very inspiring.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Elizabeth coming through from Namibia, and in particular from the Ministry of ICT. I'm the Deputy Director heading this division called ICT Policies and Regulations, which is a quite new division in the country, maybe less than 15 years or less than 20 years. I'm also like Stella, I'm just coming from village. I grew up in village, but I was fortunate to complete my high school in Windhoek, and I went to 5 universities. I'm an alumni of 5 universities. The University of Namibia, where I did my first Bachelor of Economics. Then I went to Stellenbosch. I did my Bachelor of Philosophy in Sustainable Development. I went to Dublin City University. I did my postgraduate in ICT leadership. And then I went to the University of Mauritius, where I did my master's in ICT leadership. Then I got opportunity also with the technology to do an online course with the Indian University and an MBA, just to boost my leadership skills. And now I'm a candidate, a PhD candidate for the University of Science in Namibia, NUST. I'm about to round off. I have to submit anything soon. So I hope my supervisor is not looking at me today. But I'm about to round off my PhD thesis. I have done quite extensive research. And what motivates me, I linked to the sector where I am. When I came here around 9 years ago, I could hear about connectivity, internet, and so on. When I go back home, I could see nothing. My connectivity just ends somewhere 15 kilometers after I fill up my car. Then I start with this notion of rural connectivities. I start in meetings advocating for, but why is only connectivity here? We have 5 towers, but where I come from or where I go during holiday, there is nothing. And I cannot spend that much time at the village because I want to be connected. So mostly I spend my holiday in village because I have to do other things, studies and research and so on. And I put this notion. And I really now, the ministers, you know, I work under 3 ministers, and everyone came with the idea. They said, let's have a connectivity program. Let's put the responsibility on the service providers too, so that they can make sure that we have also rural connectivities projects. And you know, the service providers only go to the areas where they make money. But this is what deliberate effort for government, that please make sure that we connect everyone, regardless where they are. And during COVID, that came out strongly that rural connectivity need to be connected in order to survive. They could not get information, they could not do e-learning because they are not connected. So I was inspired that with my working experience and my living experience, there was a disconnect between the two lives. And as I speak, my site or my village where I come from, they got a 3G internet mobile network, not because of corruption or any other influence. It was also in the list of sites to be connected. But that's how inspired. But wherever you are, look at the people where you come from. And I'm inspired by those people who always point out possibilities that I could not consider myself. You know, sometimes we don't realize our own abilities, and that holds back our thinking who we are. But I'm inspired by those people who always committed to do whatever it takes to succeed. No matter how long it takes you, how fast, how heavy, and how expensive or less expensive it is, as long as you're going to succeed at the end of the day. It's what matters to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And seeing that it's Women's Day, Elizabeth, I'd like to pose a challenge to you, especially that you're coming from the Ministry of ICT, right? In Namibia, in terms of women technical skills, do you see something that you could put in place to empower and build ICT technical skills from a woman perspective? Is that something that you can put in place, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's possible. And I think from a national policy perspective, our Namibian government have been on a procurement of women empowerment, gender equality. And I think it's possible. We have started with deliberate programs that empower young girls to come into the profession of ICT and computer science. Although it takes we have some cultural issues, some preferences. Some girls are shy, some girls don't see themselves in the profession. But like I said, it's a top-down approach. The government have already pronounced itself that gender equality should be addressed. We should have diversity. And even in the key position nowadays, you will find that they will question when you don't have a woman in your management or in your ESCO. It's a given fact. But we also don't want just to bring in ladies and girls just for the sake of having numbers, the 50-50 issue, but also we want to bring in quality so that end of the day, you know, we are just twice as a woman. You are just, the judgment, the first judgment is your sex, then the second one is your ability or your competencies. Now, if you bring in these ladies just because of gender mainstreaming, the second judgment of quality will play a role in their lives. So, but for sure, we know that there are a lot of ladies that are capable of doing it better than men, if I may say that. But because of this stereotype, we tend to sit back and not trying. But from government perspective, it's possible, and we're enforcing it that wherever we are, even in a grant, giving out the bursaries, the scholarship, the loans, the admission criteria of the universities, we make sure that ladies or girls, they're in numbers. But in faculties like science, engineering, and computing, you see still those discrepancies that the men are more than ladies, but it's because of other cultural backgrounds and upbringing and some primary schools education and so on. Some people were never exposed to computer at the primary school level. But this is the things that we are trying to implement as we move forward.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Namibia is going, you know, with some of the developments you mentioned, it's clearly a step in the right direction, and people like you on board can definitely turn this around. Thank you for that. I will now move to Nosipho Simelane, who's the Oracle University Director. Basically, brief introduction, what inspires you and what is your personal philosophy?
Thanks, Shireen. As Shireen has mentioned, I'm Nosipho Simelane. I'm responsible for Oracle University for the Africa territory. I've been in tech my whole career. I worked for a broad range of multinationals and done a various range of things in that time. Studied, funny enough, I didn't really study technology. I studied finance and accounting, and found myself in the tech space as a let's see what tech has to provide. And whilst I might not be hands-on technical, I've enjoyed doing various things, leading technical teams, being in a sales environment, etc. I'm a mom to two, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, and I'm a friend. To find my balance between the tech world and I guess my home life, I'm a passionate social cyclist. So Shireen, you asked what's inspired me. I'm inspired by women doing great things. I come from a family of very strong rocks. I'll call them bogotos. And they've just inspired greatness and me, and they've inspired me to want to thrive and want to succeed and tackle everything with absolute best that I can. What's my personal philosophy is be the best that you can be, and don't compromise yourself in the midst of being the best that you want, in being the best that you're aiming to be.
Oh, thank you. You know, I love the part where you brought in you're a mom of two. You know, we women have such a great way of juggling between our careers, being a mom, being a wife, and many different other hats as well. So it's really interesting to hear how you juggle between all of that and still maintain a positive can-do attitude. And I think that's what women needs to hear, right? We always need to have that can-do attitude. And that's the only way we're going to get ahead. And we're going to start believing in ourselves that we're capable of doing anything. And I mentioned earlier on, you know, technology has no gender. It doesn't have any agenda. So you can be whatever you want to be in this digital era space. We now move to Markie Jantjies, who's the University of Western Cape Associated Professor. In fact, it's Professor Markie Jantjies. That's amazing, fantastic. We now would like to listen to you. What inspires you? What is your philosophy? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Afternoon, Shireen, and all the guests today. A special warm welcome to all the panelists. It's great to be in the midst of such greatness, listening to all the women talk about what inspires them and their backgrounds. I hope my internet behaves today. We don't want any misbehaving.
You're perfect so far. You sound
great.
Perfect.
Great to hear that. What inspires me? I'm always inspired by people who are able to change the world or change their communities with very little. I look at those people and I look at myself and I say, if I have a platform and all the resources that I have, what am I doing to actually change people's lives and impact them? If someone with very little, with no platform, with no network as big as mine can make such a difference in people's lives, then what am I doing every day to impact people's lives? And that's something that really always inspires me. Background of myself. So I grew up in the city of Mahikeng in the Northwest Province, which borders South Africa and Botswana. I had the really great privilege of learning information technology and programming from high school. So when I was about 14 years old, that was my first interaction with technology. And so it kind of set me off on the trajectory of the field. My first lab was actually engineering. I actually wanted to be an engineer so much. I think my father was raising a little boy, realizing that after leaving the house, because I was determined to be an engineer, go to Germany and work for the Formula One racing cars. That's how I just saw myself. And so I finished high school, and I was very lucky that when I finished high school, there was a technology boom across the world. And it became apparent to me that this was an area that I wanted to go into. And I was privileged to go to the Northwest University, privileged to be taught by Dr. Wai, actually, who did the opening speech. And she was one of the people who really inspired me in my career, because I saw this young woman who was just taking over class, and I actually loved her class as she was teaching. And so continued my studies, did a bit of work in consultancy, but absolutely loved research, and decided to pursue my studies and continued both in South Africa and in the UK. And coming back to South Africa, I decided to focus on research and academia. And much of that was the ability that we have with technology to enable, to create access, to bring some form of equality in terms of access. And things that I've done over the years was when I came back to South Africa, I realized that there was a stark need for young women to be exposed to the field of technology at a young age, because you can't be what you cannot see. So I started different programs in communities that would engage young women on the possibilities of computer science and information systems, to expose them to what the fields are, to try and engage them. And also much of my research work has been in how do we create digital platforms that can be easily accessible for communities, that can enable children in underprivileged schools to get access to mathematics, to science learning material, that can enable people in remote and rural areas to get access to better healthcare. And so I see technology as an enabler that we can use to bring access to people around the country.
Oh, thank you, Maki. I'm going to stay on you, right? So, there's some interesting points that you covered. So what I'd like to ask you, how has this pandemic affected your work, your life?
So I'm a mother. It's great to hear other mothers also on the panel. And every mother, and credits to fathers as well, who through the pandemic had to sit there and homeschool their children as well. I think personally in my life, I really had to balance between teaching my kids. One of my children was in grade 1 during the pandemic, and you couldn't really say sit in front of the laptop and learn on your own. So I had to balance the working, the publishing papers, the teaching, the having a normal sanity home. But I look at it more as privilege. So my problems were, how do I, in a very connected house with schools who can learn online, enable all that to happen? But what bothered me was the schools and the teachers who are unable to create this context where learning could happen, you know, with or without a classroom context. And so I spend a lot of my time during the pandemic working with teachers to try and see what accessible resources like WhatsApp could they use to create videos that they can send to parents for learning. But what I can tell you is that I learned to have to be kind to myself during the pandemic, that I can't do it all And on things that I wasn't able to, I would say, no, I can't participate on this. I have to be present to myself as well. So there's no doubt about it that if we have to look at the impact of women during the pandemic, you'll see that there was a drop in productivity on what they were able to produce at that time. And I suppose men who are caregivers as well at home, but there is no doubt that there was a significant impact on my productivity output. But I took that time to say, how do I help myself and how do I help those who don't have as much privilege as I do to continue and survive the pandemic?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's all about adapting and juggling, especially if you're a mom and you have kids and they are in school. It's how do you juggle between them? Because I found the same. My daughter struggled with the online learning because she's hyperactive, always like to fidget. And for her to concentrate and focus was a real challenge. So as a mom, you've got to give that additional help, and all credit to the dads as well. The dad also played his part and helped, because it becomes too much for one individual. So here, this is where the woman and the man really learns to juggle and work together as one team. What I found in this new era and in this what this pandemic has brought for us. Stella, maybe I'll go to you. You've been very quiet. You started off. The next question I'm going to pose to you, right? Choosing a challenge. Let me give you another. What could be done to overcome or smash stereotypes and encourage women to choose computing careers?
Well, I think for me, that's really not a difficult one. I mean, the importance of education, we need to educate. And also I think we need to educate more on the issues around the STEM field, where I reside closely on the information technology, like my fellow sister, Professor Maki, who I admire a lot, by the way. So I think in that field is just to make sure that we demystify the fact that this is not a boys' club, and look at the digital gender equality, which requires support of men as well. Because I think sometimes we think it's only the responsibility of us as women. And I know that personally, I learned a lot from my male mentors in academia, especially because I came from the same department, as a student, and being able to lead, my colleagues who were my lecturers. So I've learned a lot from them in how to operate within this field of academia. But I found that I failed when I tried to imitate them directly. I didn't do so well. So that talks about a lot of times we as women are not even aware of our own biases, recognizing that all we have, biases and understanding of what groups of people we might subconsciously discriminate against. I think it's a must that we need to just alter our behavior. And I'm saying this thinking about where I grew up. When a car is broken or a bicycle, my uncles or my mom, almost everyone will just, scream at a boy child or somebody next to a different gender than mine to go and fix. So in other words, mechanics are not meant for us women. Our hands, it's more like we are stereotyping them to the kitchen or to handle certain things. But I think at the same time, we need to also realize that these technologies that we're talking about and where I am is every decision that we make, we need to get professional analysis on unconscious bias of the training issues, such as having an all-male panel, and seeing that as okay, discussing issues of gender. From my space, I always teach my students to say that get involved in these technologies that we are building, especially now that within UJ, we are a leading thought in the fourth industrial revolution, to say we must be part of the policies of this, the fourth industrial revolution that we talk about, because technology impacts everyone. We have seen with this pandemic that women were more even affected, especially I'm also a mother of 2 primary school kids, and I had to juggle between the 2. So I was not spared out of this, pandemic in terms of how it affected me, and being in this digital space where it's more like it was thrown as a bomb to all of us, like you have to deal with it. I couldn't help but start thinking about my aunt, to say, oh my word, my aunt in the village, I wonder how she is coping. And then I started seeing the reality of the digital divide, even though it's been around for a long time, but it started being very obvious because now I had to teach my own uncles, to video call on WhatsApp. And I think it's very important that we educate, but also support for equality must begin, especially in the tech industry itself, by eradicating the historical gender imbalances through proactive policies. I think if we need to close this gender gap in the industry, it will have positive long-term implication. But for me, and it's in summary, we have to educate, and educate and educate. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. I completely agree with you. And education is key. And Nosipho, just on that, right? What I'd like to understand, what is Oracle doing, or what are some of the programs that Oracle has put in place to help women or support women in the digital departments?
Thanks, Shireen. So I love this question. Me being in Oracle University, which is our mandate, is getting our customers empowered on the technology that they acquire in Oracle. But this question for me touches me at 2 levels. There's a view of looking at the outside world, and then of course the Oracle world. So from an Oracle perspective, we've got the Oracle Academy and Oracle University. And Oracle Academy is about taking programs to the youth, and basically onboarding them onto the skills of coding, onto Java. And that's part of what we are doing and it's not just about breaking the digital, the gender divide, but it's touching, bringing technology to underprivileged areas, underprivileged children, and touching on the underrepresentation and talking to that STEM field. And then we've got Oracle University, which is now talking to, you've got the Oracle already, and you're building the skills and the capacity for customers that have bought Oracle, customers that want to buy Oracle. But it's also creating the pipeline for people to create businesses, open businesses, and entrepreneurship, but also going into big corporates and supporting big corporates, but being at the forefront as well of deciding the types of career paths they want to follow, whether they want to be in the coding space, whether they want to sell the technology, whether they want to be in the design space as well. So there are those programs that are talking to onboarding a young child from the ages of about 7 to 14. There's a program there from Oracle Academy, and then there's the programs that are coming from Oracle University. I think from an internal perspective, what Oracle is doing is we continue to empower our women in the business through continuous evolution on developing, and a very strong focus on developing the women and creating circles for women to support each other, but also for women to be supported outside of the sphere of women.
Thank you, Nosipho. I think that was perfectly put. And I can hear your passion to support women and make a difference. Elizabeth, we haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to now direct this question across through to you. What are steps that government is doing to actually support equality in the digital industry? What are some of the steps that government is taking? You can maybe elaborate and share with the panel.
Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, we work closely with the University of Higher Learning. Most of them have started introducing some programs in place, sort of data science, poaching, and all those cybercrime and all those type of programs. We serve in those advisory boards when they draft a curriculum. We make sure that girls are on board. Anyway, technology does not discriminate. It's just our institutions and systems that really bring in that element of discriminatory approach. We also want the institution of higher learning to make this field more exciting for ladies or for women. They have to build a recruitment and inclusive diversity. So we can see the numbers of male and female are almost 50-50. And we also have to combat the issue of cultural belief. They have to give proper orientation at the first year so that these girls can have the motivation, they can build up the trust and confidence that they will do it at the end, they will enjoy the profession, because we don't want the dropout at the early stage. And we want to see these young girls and women taking it up in the industry and then in the leadership position at the later stage. We also want to create the stereotype of this male-dominated issue is really real in Namibia. We still see it, although gradually we have started addressing it. You see some big companies now bringing women in leadership. Even our regulator, CRAN, a lady have taken over a month ago. She's a CEO now. We see these leadership ladies, women in leadership coming in, especially in the sector of ICT and computing. And they should feel the sense of belonging. I think really there was that a breakaway environment between male and female in the industry. And I think now we start feeling that we are coming together. There is a connection now between male and female in the industry. And they have to increase their computer annexity, and they also have to bring in that self-efficacy into themselves, so that they can believe in themselves and prosper. But the systems are in place to support the ladies, to support the women. There is deliberate policies in Namibia that support that. Even if a lady or a female go to an interview and you come second, it's deliberate approach by the Public Service Commission. You get the position as long as you perform and you have the right credentials. So there is a deliberate move from the Namibian government to address the issue of diversity and gender equality.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think, again, it's a step in the right direction. And it's good to see that more ladies are now being empowered in the leadership position. I have to read this chat by Portia Matsina. She's the CIO of BankServe. I thought when I looked at it, I thought, wow, it's such an important comment, right? I'm currently the CIO of BankServe and find myself operating in a world that is so dominated by males. The financial sector is not an area that is explored by most ITC practitioners. I work in the financial services sector, and I can attest to that, Portia. I know exactly where those sentiments are coming from. I find that we limit ourselves to industries that are so male-dominated, such as manufacturing, mining, and financial services sector. So that's anyone wants to comment about what Portia said, ladies, or the panelists? When I read her a comment, I think it's absolutely on the point. And I do a lot of work in the financial services, mining, and manufacturing. And I can attest to exactly what her feelings and her views are. Any comments from anybody around what Portia shared on the chat? Okay. Elizabeth, do you want to say something?
Yes, I totally agree with the comment, and it's a reality on the ground, especially the banking sector and the mining and the manufacturing. This is what I asked my colleagues earlier this morning. To what extent do we as government institutions enforce these good novel ideas that we have, like the gender equality issue? I know in Namibia you have to submit your affirmative action report annually. I don't know how are those reports cooked, that some company gets a good standing while you don't have leadership, women in leadership in those positions, and especially the IT department. We have been shying away, it's not our environment. People ask you, are you real? Are you serious? You can do it. I say, yes, I studied. Those who study, yes, okay. And then they start looking into how you do it. But even men work in, they will say, yes, there you go, start doing it. But the women, they will first have a reservation. sit, wait and see whether you can do it or not. So really, the financial sector need to man up, and this is a responsibility of the regulator, which is government, to look to it, that all the policies are addressed, especially in private sector. They do as business as usual, but this is what the regulator have to step in and oversee, that these number policies are implemented across all the sectors in the society.
I totally agree with you, Elizabeth. I see Portia's got her hand up. Portia, would you like to comment or share share your feedback?
Yes, thank you, Shireen. I think I'm intimidated by the various women here with their PhDs and everything. It makes me not even want to say anything, but I must say at the same time, I'm motivated to also study further. But yes, I've just joined the banks. I'm hardly 3 months into this organization, and prior to that, I was with Plascon in the manufacturing. And what I found is the fact that in this industry, you're right, Sharon, there isn't women, and especially people of color, because it's an industry that, for example, in South Africa, it's not an industry that is regulated by government. You know, I found that where we participate a lot, it's where government can regulate or has a say in those environments. And such environments, they don't have a say in terms of what needs to happen and how you need to be established and stuff like that. And I find it very difficult in a sense that you at times have to go into sessions, and especially at this level, you find yourself surrounded by, you happen to be a woman of color, surrounded by males, and the only woman of color. And you also look at the lower levels. I don't even want to talk about the level I'm at right now. You look at the lower levels, they're still not existing, you know, from even the males that we thinking they participate in this space. The male, they are not there. You know, it's an environment that we don't explore as people of color. It's an environment that is too intimidating, I'm not sure, but it's an environment that you can come in and within 3 months you can resign because it's just too intimidating. And I think we need to break that bondage and say, how do we proceed to ensure that now we bring in, as you go into the academics, and I want to challenge the people in academia to say, as you go into the academia, you need to channel them to such spaces when they come to their interns, channel them to the banks, channel them to the financial sector, channel them to the manufacturing, because it's not explored. You know, they are channeled to other areas, but not this one. And that is why I thought this is a forum that I want to bring in to say, let's rather channel our people to the right sectors. Let's start somewhere. It's a sector that is not tapped at all.
I agree with you, Portia. I totally concur. And you know, also where I see it should start from, HR, right? HR should drive these mentorship programs and have these coaching and mentoring for people to grow and transition into these roles. And I think that's where, for me, I find HR failing, right? When you see the new appointments, you wonder, where's the diversity? Where's the women? And we have very capable women. As you said, look at this panel, right? Some really learned and really prestigious women in this panel. But this is where I feel we are failing as an organization, or as companies are failing, is HR needs to step up and turn this around, bring in the diversity in the financial services. I must say, I'm starting to notice a difference in mining industry. I deal a lot with the executives in the mining industry, and I've seen a lot of change. A lot of financial directors are now women, CFOs are now being appointed as women. So I'm starting to see a very slight change in the mining industry, but I think in the manufacturing and the banking industry, there's a lot that needs to be done. But any other comments, anyone else want to add to what Portia has said? I know we digressed a little, but it was a very valid point that she shared.
Good afternoon, esteemed guests. As you can hear, I'm not a female, so my name is Daryl Dennis, but I'd like to just comment on what was just spoken about, and please take this from where it comes. So I've been in the IT industry for over 27 years, many of which, or the better part of which, was with NTT, or better known as Dimension Data. And I think as much as you do not have many females in positions, as you rightfully say, I do also believe that what is important is to elevate those who are in positions. And I tell you this, and I'll just give you an indication. The CIO for Transnet South Africa is a female, Rabato Madiba. The CIO for Standard Bank Corporate Investment is a female, Makana Mosidi. The CIO for the City of Cape Town is Omeshni Naidu.
No, not for long. Makana is leaving. She'll be out of there by end of April. Okay, and she hasn't been long with the bank.
Yeah. So anyway, point taken, Makana is a very close friend of mine. You talk about Rand Merchant Bank, the CIO, CTO is Zanella Nyoka. National Parliament, it's Fatima Baltman, see the CIO. Social Development is the CIO national. So I think, ladies, with all due respect, it is important to elevate the importance of females within the ICT sector. That's non-negotiable. But I think where we as industry at large, me included, fail dismally is not to elevate those very females who are in such important and strategic positions. If we don't do that, it's a spinning wheel. You will constantly talk about, you know, a male has been appointed the CIO. So I'm not for 1 minute arguing the point. All I'm really saying is that we should celebrate those who are in positions that are strategic and see how best we take those as an industry and elevate them where they become the CIO for Anglo Gold Ashanti or Westbank or the like. So this is my comments, which I think is important, and we need to embrace this and see how best we elevate those ladies who have made it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daryl. And I agree, right? It's important to still. Nasipo, you want to say something? I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, yes, Shireen. So I think when, and I'm going to reflect a little bit on some of the programs that have been offered by the organizations I've worked for, and the organizations ranging from an HP, a Microsoft, an IBM, and an Oracle. I think change, yes, is going to be affected by, you know, you have to change the policies, but I think in changing the policies, you also have to start with, we need to form the quorum group of women. We need to decide what the agenda is that we want to be prioritized and elevate the discussion and bring it to the boardroom. And that's where the change is going to be. But in also bringing it, I think we must come up with the constructive option, you know, constructive dialogue that talks to redress, you know, what we're seeing perhaps in the workplace. And I think that's a start. I'm part of the women's leadership, the Oracle Women's Leadership Forum. And it's a community that is about fostering, seeing women grow within the Oracle. It's about addressing gender equality, you know, showcasing that we as women can lead, we can grow, we can enter these pretty much male-dominated environments and do it successfully like our male peers. So I think that's a starting point. But you know, not also ignoring that we probably need to take it back a couple of steps as well, and maybe many steps, where it starts from. So it starts with the girl child and introducing STEM to that girl child. Let's bring the coding to young children. Let's not introduce it to them when they're much older. And then we're having these discussions because we haven't created a pipeline. So I think these programs have to run in parallel, and we need to ensure that they are the feeders. So I spoke about Oracle Academy. Oracle Academy has to be the feeder for, you know, you're getting into university, what's then available in university. And then the university has to be the feeder of what's happening in the workplace. And then the workplace also has to continue running the programs to ensure that across the levels and across the various role types that exist within the tech space, we are building the capacity, both from a gender perspective, both from a race perspective. And I think that's how we start redressing it. But we have to lead as women. We have to take charge of this conversation because nobody else is going to take charge of it.
I agree with you, Nasipo. I totally agree. I'm just looking at the time. We've got 5 minutes left. Marky, I'm going to give you the last question, right? Seeing that you've been very quiet. What steps should the public and private agencies take to ensure equality in the digital environments? What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much, Shireen. And I think it's been great listening to the great panelists speaking about from education to policy changes to environment changes. I think personally, I can tell you that if we look at the Global Gender Gap Index, South Africa fares very well on paper, right? And so to what extent are we holding organizations accountable for transformation in leadership roles? To what extent are we enabling women to strive in those contexts? So it's one thing to say we want transformation, we want female leaders within the context, but when they get there, the environments become absolutely toxic for them to remain there. And literally they get pushed out. And we've seen several examples of those in South African context where women are elevated to leadership roles, rightfully so, on merit, but when they get there, the structure of the environment and the context essentially pushes them out. So I'll just reiterate what some of the speakers have said without taking away the great examples that they gave. But I think we need to start young for both male and female. We need to plant the seed from a very young age on the possibilities for both genders to reach their contribution within the field, to educate them and to show them on the fields that they can actually go into. Because it's one thing to want an end product, but we're not looking at how are we creating that end product. And I think when it comes to corporates and government, we need more accountability on that. So while we fare great on the Global Gender Index, we need to start seeing those changes. We need to also add mentoring structures that when you bring a woman within the chair, and my take is that we can talk about policies and getting women up there, but give them the chance to actually lead. Give them the chair and the context and the environment to lead. If we look at the pandemic and all the countries that were led by women, we can see the outputs that came from those countries and how they handled the pandemic so well because they're very inclusive in the way they do things, not taking away male leadership and what it's able to achieve, but give women an opportunity and create an environment for them to thrive and succeed. But we cannot look at the end product if we're not doing a good job in ensuring that the pipeline, because we have a terribly leaky pipeline of young girls. If you look at young girls in high school, they would take up these subjects, but what happens between them in high school and university? We don't have a good throughput rate of the children who actually finish through the university. So what are we doing to actually monitor those children right from primary school all the way to the corporate office? Thank you.
Thank you, Maki. We're now going to move to, thank you, ladies. Thank you, the panel. I really appreciate the feedback, the insights that were given from you guys. I think it was very valuable. Some of them were really eye-openers and food for thought, right? In terms of what we need to think about and how we need to develop the future and the roadmap for the ladies in the workplace. Before we go, anybody else in the audience would like to maybe ask or flag any questions to the panel? Anyone would like to ask any questions? We've got quite a nice audience.
I see Kumbutso has their hand up.
Okay, go for it, Kumbutso. You're unmuted. Kumbutso? Or do you want to put it on the chat so I can ask it? We can't hear you.
She's on mute.
That's actually Honorable Minister Kumbutso Ntshavheni. That's my Minister of Small Business.
Oh, okay, Honorable Minister, welcome. We can't hear you.
She's also acting minister in the presidency.
Absolutely.
Can we ask the host to unmute her? She should be able to.
She's unmuted. Farah, she is unmuted, right?
Let me unmute her again because I unmuted her.
Okay.
She's unmuted.
Go for it. We cannot hear you. Yeah, now we can hear you, but you're very soft. No. Is she unmuted, Raf?
Yes, from my side, she's unmuted.
Okay.
if she's on a mobile, maybe she wants to just join her voice again quickly.
Yeah.
Shireen, can you see her?
Yes, I can see her. I can. Sorry, Kumbuso, we can't hear. Oh, she's rejoining. Let's see if we can hear you now.
I think what we can do is maybe just to chat, Minister can log out and log in again. I would love to hear this honorable member, because in my view, I serve in the CEDA board, so I'm not being biased, but I work closely.
Don't worry, Stella. We totally understand.
I must also take the opportunity that she's an alumni of the University of Johannesburg before she went overseas. But, you know, I know that definitely she's going to touch on the issue of ICT and connectivity. And that's one of the conversations that we have with her. That indeed, within this tech industry, the scary reality is that we may probably not see economic gender parity in our lifetime. And I think women are severely underrepresented, represented, as Daryl has said. But the truth of the reality is, we are saying that despite the progress that we see, it is progress. I don't like to say it, but the truth is, you kind of say, I'm the first female in the department to lead in that position. For me, it's not only unacceptable, but it's really not setting a good example. And it's not saying that we're doing quite a lot. But yeah, that Honorable Minister is coming back and to talk to us. I would not want us to miss this opportunity.
Absolutely. Kumbuso? No. Go for it, Daryl.
I was just saying, when I saw Stella, I didn't see the surname Vuma. I thought that was the Honorable Minister of Communications and Telecoms as well. Also, Kumbuso, I'm sure many would you be aware that Kumbuso had a stint in ICT. She used to be the deputy CEO of CETA, correct?
Oh, okay, fantastic. So hopefully we get to hear her before we close off. I'm going to now hand you over to the PAICTA. Sanwabo, who's the next person that's going to come on to just talk about PAICTA and what?
It's supposed to be Shwama, then Atley.
Yeah, is Shwama on the call?
Yes,
hi Shwama, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, I'm trying to make
we can see you, there we go.
All right. I am speaking about WiDE.
We're losing you, your connectivity.
Digital era. Is it better now?
Much better.
Much better.
Progress. All right, so as I was saying, I am based in Namibia. I am the head of the Department of Informatics here at the Namibian University of Science and Technology. I have to apologize also because I joined this meeting a little bit late. I was in another meeting and I had to catch up. So I'm asked to speak about WiDE, to bring to your attention what is WiDE. WiDE is a PAICTA chapter for Women in Digital Era, since PAICTA has identified inclusion of women in the digital era or digital space as a way to leapfrog to Industrial Revolution 4.0. The importance of ICT in accelerating women progression is emphasized in the Agenda 2030, also by the SDG 5, which is specifically focused on the use of technology to promote women. So if we look at the statistics worldwide and also coming down to Africa, There's very, very few women involved in digital space. We're looking at 28% of professionals in the sector and just above 30% of women in the sub-Saharan Africa. So yeah, that's the main reason we want to involve and to focus on women. We want to have the statistics or the numbers increasing also here in Southern Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa, and in turn we're contributing to the figures in the world. So who is Women in Digital Environment then for PAICTA? This is a chapter for women. It's designed to accelerate gender equality and women empowerment in digital era. WiDE has, as we abbreviated, has a vision, which is to empower women in digital space. As simple as it sounds, that is our vision. We also have strategic goals that we want to focus on in the next 5 years. That is the socio-economic development and sustainability. And we want to look at that in threefold. We want to look at the societal impacts that WiDE can make. We also want to look into the economical impact that's increasing income equality. We look at innovators. We look at female innovators in the digital space. We try to empower them and also encourage more to come on board. The third fold of how we're looking at social economical development and sustainability is through leadership impact. That is by promoting women, encouraging women to take up leadership roles in the digital space. I am moving on to the second strategic goal of WiDE, which is capacity building. We want also to impact on training, impacting women, specifically those that reside in the rural and peri-urban spaces of our developing country. We want to teach them, we want them to have the relevant skills related or very. We also want to provide capacity. We want to promote them, recruit them, and also empower them to be able to make decisions for themselves. Some of the challenges that we talk about when we are studying or perhaps discussing women in digital space is lack of skill, lack of confidence, and also exposure. So we want to encounter those things. We want to tackle those issues and ensure that they are dealt with. So one of the points or the goals that we have that we believe will definitely help us to meet our targets is through networking and partnership. So we try to engage and to bring on board
We're struggling to hear you, Suma. Your connection is bad. Can you guys
have or share the same vision or similar to that of PAICTA environment? Hi, can you do better
breaking
now?
up a bit, much better, Suma, much better.
Much better?
Yes.
All right, so thank you. I was just getting to the conclusion of my speech. I highlighted the vision for PAICTA, and I moved on to talk about PAICTA goals. And I was covering the last part of the goals, that is networking and partnership, that we try to bring on board partnership that buys in or share the same vision as PAICTA, and also WiDE, that is Women in Digital Environments. We're still working and we believe in effective and good collaborations between our partners. And we want, we are constantly in need and looking for partners that can contribute to our vision. In short, colleagues, that is all I had to share with you about women in digital environment. I encourage you to please join us, please come on board, and let's make a difference in our societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Suma. I appreciate it. And ladies, just to ladies and gents, to let you know, PAICTA is a really great organization. They basically are development and growth towards the digital inclusion. They're responsible for small, medium enterprises to build the community in Africa and to actually upskill and bring digital innovation into Africa. So, we have all of these powerful forums and organizations. We need to really promote them, and we need to really take advantage so the youth can actually benefit from this. And I think the most important thing about PAICTA is about gender inequality. How do they bridge that gap around gender inequality, right? And as youth and as girls and as women, we need to make sure we pass this message along so that people see the value of PAICTA and they can really start leveraging some of the value and benefits of this organization. I just want to, before we go to the closing of Simba, I wanted to find out, is Minister Mbuzu's around? Are you okay now? Because we'd really like to hear from you.
I am okay now. Thank you.
Perfect. Welcome. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for a great platform. But I've been listening to a whole lot of speakers and the contributions that have come through. Myself, I've been in the IT space for a while, though I took sabbatical some 7 years ago, and then I find myself where I am. But it's interesting that the conversations you are having today is the same conversations we had back then when I was still an ICT executive. And what I've found, or what I've learned now, and they're saying, when you sit in a different forum, when you reflect back, you have lessons. What I've learned is that, and it's the issue that was raised by Mr. Daryl Dennis, and also I think another person raised it also, about creating an environment where we support women and we create that network, because it's very lonely on top. It's very lonely for Emakano, who is in Standard Bank, and everybody else who's on the top, because we are not there to support them. And I know that because I've been there. And therefore, when we talk about women in ICT in particular, there are no role models. And that is in inverted commas, because young women are not taught to celebrate the other young women who are rising in that ICT world. So that's the one thing we need to do. What would have happened if we create a platform that says, if Kumbuzo is here, if Dr. Stella Vuma is there, how do we celebrate them and make sure that they can be supported, they can be guided? We put that network, not in this kind of forum, but that network that says, what do you need? A sisterhood, because the men succeed because there's a boys club, but there is no girls club that we've put in place. And talking about that, it's also relevant now in South Africa or in Africa, where the fourth industrial revolution, when we're still preparing for it, we were kind of launched into it because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you look at what's happening, it's the boy child who's developing the apps, who's responsive and all that. And it does not mean the girl child is not doing the same, but the girl child does not have the same exposures. Because I've asked myself now as a Minister for Small Business Development to say, in the communities where connectivity, and I use my own example, when children had to go to school online, as a mother, I was thinking, is there no platform that I could create cheaper that my child and his schoolmates can access education through that? If it was a girl child developing an app, that child would have looked at an app for immunization of kids, continued immunization of kids, but the boys are looking at a marketplace. They're looking at selling gadgets. They're looking at selling other things. But a girl child would have developed things that would have helped the community. But as women leaders in ICT and as women leaders in general, what are we doing to propel the girl child, their own innovations, to make sure that they participate here? And it brings the issue of saying, when we talk about connectivity, I see your background is Oracle. How do we make sure that in your own environment, the Oracle, the software licenses become accessible or freer or cheaper or affordable to those programs or applications that will help women and girl children to rise in that space, to get connected, to do all other things. And I've said to my colleague, Minister Stellanda Beni-Abrams, connectivity is no longer about connecting schools. It's no longer about connecting clinics. It's about connecting homes, because we have learned with COVID-19 that the last mile is no longer to the school. The last mile is to the home, and making that data available and cheaper and freer at a home, and in particular in a rural home, but in particular for a girl child and women-headed household, because we remain the anchor and the core. And what the pandemic has taught us now is that women must be on the front, but as women, again, yourself who are in leadership or holding various positions in ICT, how are you projecting yourselves? How are you supporting yourselves to make sure that you can bring this digital economy and this digital world to become a real environment for young women, but also for a girl child, but for the society to promote the development of our communities? That's my contribution only. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Minister Kumbuzo. It's a pleasure having you. You know, I need to touch on a very valid point you raised, right? It's all about the connectivity to the home, because this pandemic has brought a different mindset. But the reality is, if you look at the data cost in South Africa, we are the most expensive. So that's the first thing we need to get right here. Like the MTNs and Vodacoms, we need to find a way. How do we get them to decrease their data cost so it becomes more affordable for the areas where it's unaffordable, right? So that is something I think we as women need to fight against and try and see how we can change. And the other most important point that I take from you is, and it makes absolute sense, is this platform. If you look at the powerful women we have here, right? We've got voices, we need to be heard. As you said, you started this journey many years ago, but what has really changed? Nothing significant. So we're doing something wrong. And what is it that we need to do differently to turn this around? Because clearly we're not being heard. If you started then and now we're basically discussing very similar agenda points, we need to change our approach. And Minister, this is something I challenge you as the being Women's Month, International Women's Month. We need to change our approach. And this is where we would see guidance and direction from you in terms of what should we be doing as women to change this and make ourselves more relevant in the marketplace, in the industry, so that we don't leave the Mechanos all alone by themselves and now having to want to leave the bank because they've come to a point where they realize they're not winning, right? So this is what we need to do. We need to become more outspoken, and we need to have serious change, because clearly we are not changing in the right direction. We need to be more forceful. So thank you. I don't know if anybody else has any comments for the Minister or want to share anything.
We thank God for Minister Kumbuzo. That's all we can say.
And your passion just oozes out. We can hear it. Thank you. And thank you for all your contribution as well to society. And now we'll
let's thank the Minister, Sharon. Thank you very much. On behalf of PAICTA, thank you very much, Minister, in taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of and participate in this big day for Women, International Women's Day. And we appreciate it as PAICTA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So Nwabo, I'll now hand over to you for the closing remarks.
I've got a quick one, 2-3 minutes from Atli.
Okay.
Atli.
Yes, can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
A pleasure. I'm just gonna be very quick. I'm part of the advisory board members for PAICTA, and my role today is to introduce 4IRA from the PAICTA perspective. And I'm so much privileged to have been amongst very powerful women in leadership and who are actually leading from the front. And it actually gives me that energy to share what PAICTA has in terms of its 4IRA plans and strategy. So in terms of the vision for PAICTA when it comes to 4IRA, is to be a go-to partner. So as a partner, we are saying, as women, you have the clarity in terms of what needs to be covered, you have the clarity in terms of the needs of society, be it addressing societal challenges from gender-based violence, from child online protection issues, all those aspects that you can highlight in terms of societal needs. Then we are saying, can we partner together? We can plan the projects, we can implement, we can look at some sustainability issues around that, because one of the things that we have also picked up and noticed when it comes to some of the initiatives, sometimes they are very good, but they are not sustainable in nature. We want something that is sustainable and that can also continue in a sense. So I'll not really go through the whole strategic objectives, but maybe I'll just highlight and try to link back or just rehash some of the points that already have been highlighted from the panelists as well. So if you look at the whole essence of us as PAICTA looking at 4IR and its capabilities, we are looking at the various opportunities that we are able to get out of those technologies that are disruptive in nature. As we have seen with COVID, how technology has really played a role. It actually dictated without even giving people so much of an option. Things just turned upside down and we found ourselves in these virtual spaces. They become our boardrooms overnight. They become almost a virtual platform. I recall at a point in time, we actually even hosted funerals over Zoom, something of that nature. So we are looking at even from the small aspects where technology can play a role. So if we look at 4IR, we are saying, let's not really think bigger. Let's even look at the very small things and try to apply from that context. And this is what we are trying just to look at from an objective perspective. Then just looking at some of the strategic approaches, I would want to very much rehash again the theme that the International Women's Day is having, choose to challenge. I like that. Why? Because we are looking at how can we have societal impact in terms of how we are embracing such technologies as 4IR. We are looking at some of the best practices in terms of what works in this context, maybe from one village of Africa to another village of Africa. This is what PAICTA is looking at in terms of empowering. Then we are also looking at self-sufficient to say with the resources that you would find within the communities that we are trying to address the challenges they are facing using 4IR technologies, what can we do to try and be able to appeal to the human resource capital that we have? This is now also highlighting how to empower even the youth, from the girls. Like I like what one of the panelists highlighted to say, let's just start young. So how do we do that? Then also evidence-based. Let's try to look at how we apply 4IR in terms of addressing some of the challenges that we know are specific to the societies that we are looking at. I normally have the issue and the challenge to say, when people look at Africa, they look at this homogeneous landscape. Africa is very heterogeneous in terms of its landscape, and the challenges that we have may actually even vary within the same country as well. How can we also apply 4IR in terms of looking at that? And most importantly, just engaging almost everybody. Just to wrap up, I saw this also as part of the theme for this year, maybe from another context. I know we're also using a different theme here. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. So just part of the strategic goals, this is not all that PAICTA is focusing on, but we are saying, how can we create awareness? I heard one of the panelists saying, educate, educate. That also speaks to capacity building and sustainability, like I say, to say, how can we also create sustainable 4IR solutions within the communities and societies where we are addressing some of those challenges. So this is what PAICTA is saying, and we are actually calling in for your participation in every aspect. I would say Happy International Women's Day. This year, we can all choose to challenge everything that has been holding us back and become better allies. I just took this from Lifestyle Desk. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Hi, thank you everyone. Thank you. You know, Atlee, for what you've given. I think it was inspiring. And yes, happy International Women's Day to everyone. I trust y'all had an enjoyable session. I trust y'all got value from the session and some really inspirational speakers and some really strong messaging that came through. I really hope you know, whoever joined the session got value and enjoyed the session. Best of luck and happy Women's Day, Sanwaba. I don't know if you want to add any parting shots before we close off. You're on mute. You're on mute, Sanwaba.
You're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. We can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I am wrapping up. Thank you very much for everyone that has come on board. PAICTA, I would like to thank all those who contributed to the success of this day, and further appreciate, thank you all for taking time out of your busy personal and professional schedule to honor this event. Allow me to quote a few verses taken from the book of Proverbs 31 in honor of women and sisters. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions of her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable and a lamp does not go out at night. She hands out busy spinning threads and her fingers twisting fiber. She opens her arms to the poor, extends her hands to the needy. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She laughs out without fear of the future. She speaks with wisdom and faithful instruction is on her tongue. I truly honor and salute the women you all are today as described by one of the wisest King Solomon. This day is celebrated to remember women's struggle for peace, justice, equality, and development. It is about making society realize that each and every one of us matters and can contribute to the societal developmental agenda just as much as the others can. I was born and raised in a rural area and observed the many plights and hardships that women endured daily in their lives and still endure even today. Most of the issues that women and girls go through are a result of cultural beliefs, lack of education, stereotypes, and chauvinism. These issues are truly resonating with some of us men. Therefore, we are stepping up to act against the challenges faced by women. This year, we are celebrating this day under the UN theme, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 Pandemic. PAICTA WiDE chapter has a special focus, as some of the speakers, Shwama has highlighted, Atlee has highlighted, more of a dream for women and girls in rural area to be trained on digital skills, mentored into taking up digital roles, coached to be innovators, change makers and leadership positions in the technology space. PAICTA believes that education is central to each one of these steps taken to get the woman to take a seat at the table. This is imperative for women leadership at all levels of the society and mentorship. One of the strategic goals is to form strategic partnerships with all other institutions and associations to ensure change of attitude towards women in the digital space, to install confidence through mentorship, and to encourage women to take up leadership roles. I want to reassure the women and girls out there that they belong. Digital field and its careers are perfectly fitting for women. Rise and dominate the digital industry. We are appealing to sisters and mothers on this webinar and your network to join PAICTA WiDE to support, lobby, advocate for the following in the interest of women and addressing their plight into the future. Raise awareness about women equality. Empower girls and women to be independent and mentor them to be confident. Encourage girls and young women to take action towards attaining equality. Remove limitations, barriers, especially for women in rural and peri-rural areas. Women to take their rightful place in the ICT to ensure that we build an equal future. Dissemination of ICT information content in brackets and decode it to be understandable. Let us all make a difference. Let us ensure that women in all areas of our communities are included in the digital era and active participants in the digital economy. You are who God says you are, and your circumstances can never and will never change your true identity in life. Rise, women, rise. Happy International Women's Day. I thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Woman, I'm sure you must be really inspired by those fantastic words from Sanwabo. Thank you, Sanwabo. Really feel really special as a woman, just listening to your words of wisdom. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think now we can close off. Really inspiring session. It was wonderful to be surrounded by such powerful and inspiring women. And best of luck